can't hear me, so I won't talk as long. You missed the chair? Nurse! Nurse! We don't have any insurance. No, I'm kidding, we do. But not for mental incapacitation.
I blame the heat.
Oh, she swooned. He swooned, I'm sorry, he swooned. He swooned. Okay, so what did you do with your invitation? Y'all brought it and you came and look what happens. This is one of the most difficult passages, Steve, is this true, that pastors have to preach on. And I added even the last couple verses that made it even harder because I like a challenge and I can talk longer then. No, I'm kidding. But when I was at the meeting in Orlando, I sat next to at lunch a pastor who was looking for a closing for his sermon today. And I said to him, I've got a title. What do you mean you just need a closing? So he said, oh, okay, he said, you know, if you can help me with that. He walked home with something I had written to use as his closing. I came home with nothing except these beautiful flowers that Al Pengel had sent that everybody tried to steal from us. They're absolutely gorgeous, the flowers were from us yesterday. But anyway, if we look at this passage, it's like so many other parables. It doesn't work very well. I mean, it's not a perfect analogy. It's not meant to be. But think about it. It falls apart as you read it. It says, a kingdom may be compared to a king who gives a wedding feast. Okay, right. We get that. Right? We get that because that happens in England every once in a while. Somebody gets married in the royal family, get a wedding feast. Let me ask you this. If you got an invitation to the wedding of Will and Kate, would you have said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm busy this weekend?
Yes.
Okay, that's what happens here. Okay? They wouldn't come. Can you imagine that? It's probably a whole day off for the entire kingdom. Right? And they're going, no, I'm busy. So he sends out somebody else. And they've got all the dinner prepared. And he's trying to entice them by saying, look, I got this great bill of fare for you. But they made light of it and went away. One to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized the slaves, mistreated them, and killed them. Really? Unbelievable. Can you imagine doing that? The king was enraged. Well, sure. So he sent his troops, destroyed the murderers, and burned their city. Does that strike you as a tiny bit extreme? I mean, it's extreme that they didn't want to come to the wedding, so they killed the servants who brought the message. But it's extreme that the king destroyed the whole city. Okay? Then the king says, those who are invited not worthy, go out to the main street, invite everyone you find to the banquet. Now here's what Lance Pape says. Apparently, while soldiers pillaged and slashed, while great flames devoured the buildings outside the palace walls, little sterno burners toiled away silently under the sumptuous dishes in the great hall, keeping the meal hot for the eventual guests. Right? He's pillaged the city. He's burned the city down, and yet we're having this banquet. Where is the banquet? Right? So that's what Lance Pape says. So, you know, so there's these little sterno burners someplace in the city, keeping the wedding feast warm while we find somebody to come to the wedding. I mean, the whole thing is pretty much out of whack.
Yep, that's weird.
So the slaves or the servants go out into the streets and gather all whom they found, both good and bad. And the wedding hall was filled with guests. That's the good news, right? We're all gathered. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe and said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?" And he was speechless. Now the thing about the wedding robes was whoever was giving the wedding provided those for people. Isn't that kind of cool? So we're presuming, at least the biblical scholars who study this kind of stuff are presuming that when you came in, you got a robe, so you were properly attired, and everybody pretty much got the same robe. We're not thinking that, you know, I mean, you might have got short or tall. I mean, Brian probably got one taller than the one I would get. But as far as it being of different quality or something, they think they were the same. Okay? Then the king said to the attendants, bind him hand and foot and throw him out into the outer darkness, for there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, he just called him friend. I'm thinking, I'm not sure I want to be a friend of this guy. Right? I'm thinking, I'm not sure I want to be this guy's friend. For many are called, but few are chosen. What does somebody do with this? On a hot day, they say, you know what? This is just so difficult to explain. We're not even going to try, and we're just going to move on and talk about something else, okay? We're just going to move this forward. What the scholars think is that Matthew's trying to give Matthew's version of salvation history. Matthew's trying to help his gang understand why they are believers in Jesus, and their friends and their family and their fellow synagogue persons, from their recent past are not going that same way. And so he's trying to draw that, and that's what they're supposed to, I guess, get out of it. But the question, I think, for us is, what are we supposed to get out of it? What are we supposed to get out of it? It's 20 centuries later. It's now the 21st century. And I think the point is that we're all invited. I think the point in the end is that we all got this invite. We all got this invite to be here together in this room, because being here together in this room fortifies us for the rest of the week. Because being here together in this room, when we're not afraid to lift up what's the heaviest thing on our heart, because we know that our heart in all its vulnerability will be held in the most tender, gentlest hands, and then lifted to God. That's the invitation we answer. That's the invitation we get. Come be one with me. But be one with me in community. Be one with me together, so that together we really can lift one another up. I mean, think about it. Nancy's got to drag all this dog food and cat food and whatever it is up here out to her car with her walker, and it's going to take her a while, right? Is that going to take her a while to do that? No. Not at all. Why is it not going to take her a while to do that? Because the community is going to do it. Because this community is going to do it. Or we're going to film Nancy doing it, and we're going to film America's Funniest Videos. Because that's what happens. When I raise a prayer, of course God hears it. When you raise a prayer, or you lift up someone in prayer, of course God hears it. But when we lift up a person in prayer together, think about it. I'm pretty sure that I couldn't lift Julian by myself. But I know that if I asked everybody here to raise up Julian physically, we could do that. And we're going to raise him up prayerfully. And we're going to do that. And we're going to keep doing that. And he's going to feel those hands under him. Those hands supporting him. Until when we lift him up, he sees. And we do that for each other whenever we need that. And so that's why we say when we leave here, when we go away today, don't stop praying. Continue to pray and raise up that prayer when you get that millisecond of time in between Class 1 and Class 2, or Unruly Student 1 and Unruly Student 2, that the old stupid man has to deal with. There's a millisecond in between when the secretary gives you Student 1 and Student 2. There's a millisecond in between when you're calling roll. There's a millisecond in between, no matter what your job in life. And those milliseconds, added together, lift up one another and all those beyond our doors that need our prayers. That's what we do. That's what we do. The story that my friend Bruce is using, probably right about now, is this one. And if you've been here a long time, and you're as old as I am or older, you've heard it. So just smile politely, because you probably forgot it anyway. A member of a church who previously had been attending services regularly stopped going. After a few weeks, the preacher decided to visit. It was a chilly evening. Okay, I want everybody to imagine that. It was a chilly evening. Okay, imagine you can make that happen. The preacher found the congregant at home alone, sitting before a blazing fire. Do not imagine that. Do not imagine that. Guessing the reason for the preacher's visit, the man welcomed his guest, led the preacher to a comfortable chair near the fireplace, thank you very much, and waited. The preacher got comfortable but said nothing. In the silence, they watched the dance of the flames around the burning logs. After some minutes, the preacher took the fire tongs, carefully picked up a brightly burning ember, and placed it to one side of the hearth, all alone, where it sat. The host watched all of this in silence. As the one lone ember's flame flickered and diminished, there was a momentary glow, and then its fire was no more. Soon it was cold and dead. Not a word had been spoken since the initial greeting. The preacher, glancing at the clock on the wall, realized it was time to leave and slowly stood up, picked up the cold, dead ember, and placed it back in the middle of the fire. Immediately, it began to glow once more with the light and warmth of the burning coals around it. As the preacher reached the door, the host said with a tear running down his cheek, "Thank you so much for your visit, and especially for the fiery sermon. I will be in church on Sunday." That's as close as you're going to get to a fiery sermon here. But we get it, and try to think of a different analogy that's more refreshing than that. But the message really is, you know, we don't know who that guest was that came in. Maybe he was one of the original people and he thought he was better than everybody else. Who knows? We don't know. The commentators, the scripture scholars are all over the place on who was this guy. Who was this guy? What we know is, if he hadn't been isolated, if he hadn't been separated, he probably would have had a different experience of the feast that was set for all, and to which all were invited. So here we are, and we make a choice. We come to this place, and here we are, glowing together, some of us glowing more than others. But glowing together, because together we keep that fire of Christ's love and the call of God and the answer that we are moved to be sanctuary, that we are moved to be extravagant welcome to all who come here and to all who we meet in our week. We keep that going because together the light and the warmth continue. And so I simply ask this day that you ponder, is there somebody you haven't seen in a while that we're missing? And when you think of who that person is, if you have contact information, whether it's a phone number or an email address or whatever, and you can get a hold of that person, why don't you call that person and say, you know what, we want you at the wedding feast with us. We miss you. Because here's the thing, not only do we keep you going by you being here with us, we keep each other going. And we are all diminished when we miss someone. So, let us go out and make sure we touch the lives of those who aren't here and pray for those who can't be with us this day, because there are some that can't. And we keep it going. Because here, it's not about many are called but few are chosen. I think that's ironic. I really think what our God says is all are called, all are mine, and I love you, every single one. Amen. On this
Amen.